Welcome back, guys. So this is going to be the third video in the sun signs portion of the series. It's going to be on Gemini. So we are going to talk about specific traits that Gemini has. We'll glaze over, quick recap to the modalities and things like that. So we'll talk about how Gemini is an air sign, all of those things. We'll go over dates, everything that you need to know on a basic level about the sign. And then after we get through all 12 signs, this way we will dive into specifics on each, like advice for Gemini, advice for Gemini women, Gemini men, things like that. And we'll have that for every single sign. So if you're not a Gemini and you're watching this video, or maybe your sun sign is not Gemini but you're watching this because specific characteristics you might have or something like that, don't worry, we will have more precise and specific videos circulated around a sign and qualities of that sign for you. So stay tuned for that. Let's get started. Okay, sorry guys, I had to adjust the camera a little bit, so I don't really know how this looks, but we're gonna try it out. Next two things we need to know is that Gemini is a masculine and air sign. So masculine sign we talked about in the last video. I'll do a recap on what an air sign is though, because I feel like this recap will connect generally to the Mercury influence that Gemini has as well. Air signs allow you to be a little bit more social, communicative, and intellectual, and those are a lot of qualities that you might get from Mercury influence in Gemini as well. So let's just talk about that next. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo. Mercury is the planet of communication, learning, things like that. So in Greek mythology, Mercury represents Hermes, the messenger god. And that kind of makes sense because messenger god, they take in a lot of information at once, much like Gemini and Virgo both do. Gemini takes that information and they relay that to other people. Those are always the people that are like, oh my god, did you hear about this thing? Whether it be gossip, trivia, actual factual knowledge, whatever it is, Gemini always has something that they want to share. Much like Virgo, but Virgo is kind of like, they take that Mercury influence and they use that to pick things apart and observe things and take in that information that they're seeking from themselves, more like a primary taking of whatever is around them. Anyway, let's get back to Gemini. This Mercury influence allows Gemini to be a little bit more talkative, very clever, but it also allows for that space of Gemini to kind of be a little bit childish, because Mercury was a god that was kind of like, go with the flow, but also like he loved to play tricks on people, and that's kind of what you get with that Gemini influence as well. I mean, that Mercury influence on Gemini as well. Mercury is the representation of the Greek god Hermes. So Hermes is the messenger god. If you've ever seen the kind of like shoes that Hermes wears, they kind of have wings on them. So that's Mercury like flying from well, let's start from the bottom, from underground up to where the gods are, so they can flow in between realms, whether it be underground, mortal level, or up to where the gods are. So you might hear that Geminis may have a little bit trouble with travel, or trouble with travel specifically by air. So that's a cool little tidbit. So let's get into the next cool tidbit about Gemini. Gemini rules the arms, lungs, hands, and shoulders. So hence that glyph that we talked about, those two lines representing the arms or lungs. And then we also have hands. If you ever met a Gemini, they might have very noticeable hands. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of weird. When I look at people, I always look at the features of them that are ruled by that specific sign that they are. So like when I look at Geminis, I always see them talking with their hands like this, or I see them just look at their hands and I don't know, like they're just hands I can never forget, because I'm like, oh my god, that's Gemini's hands. But that's a little weird. Let's get back to Gemini and stop talking about my weird quirks. Some keywords that we can think about Gemini is I think. That Mercury influence allows Gemini to be a very clever and intellectual sign. So they're constantly thinking about things, constantly processing things, but at the same time they're exploring new things mentally as well. So Geminis are very lively, energetic, versatile, and things like that. If you ever met a Gemini, you can kind of think of these qualities and come up with other words for them themselves, because these videos are made to allow you to be able to. Geminis are very lively, energetic, and adaptable people. They're very smart and intellectual. If you've ever met a Gemini, even though they might not seem like it, they always at least have that one subject that they're super, super, super good in. Like, they might be very good at math. They might be very good at, like, I don't know, history or things like that. Like, they're very intellectual people, and although they have a lot of interest and they like to try new things, they most likely have something specific that they're very, very, very interested in, and they might put a little bit more energy into that than other things. But you can meet a Gemini and ask them about that themselves and kind of see what I'm talking about. So, who are some famous Geminis that we have in this world? There was Tupac, one of the greatest, Kendrick Lamar, Johnny Depp, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, and the list just goes on all the way down to, you know, like even Venus Williams. So we know a lot of people that are very, very, very positive in this world, and they have qualities that you might have learned about in this video that you could look at them and be like, yo, that actually makes sense because Johnny Depp acts like this, and Marilyn Monroe was a bad bitch and she acted like this, and blah, 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 you know? So I hope this video helped you. If you liked it, go ahead and, you know, show me that, put a like on here. If you want to keep seeing videos like this and you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And the next video that we're going to get into is going to be Cancer, so stay tuned for that.